Hello, everybody. Welcome to Manitoba Music. My name is Elise. I'm the Industry Development Coordinator here. So I put on many of our training workshops, our conference January music meeting. I am the person who will give you one-on-one consults when you have questions about your music career. And then I also try to make friends with music industry people to get them interested in our music community. So that is who I am. And in this workshop, we're going to be talking about the funding available to Manitoban musicians. And I'm really excited because we have a representative from many of the different funding bodies across Canada and in Manitoba to talk very briefly about the eligibility, some of the programs available, the amounts that are available to you. So before we do begin getting all of this information from all of these wonderful people, I would like to acknowledge that we're meeting today on the lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji, Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples. And we'd also like to acknowledge the strong contribution of the Inuit, who they have a strong community here in Manitoba. And when I think about this statement, I'm just feel very grateful to be meeting and working and learning on this land, and I guess acknowledging the land for me, it's just sort of a reflection on what I can do to properly educate myself about Indigenous history, as that's the first step towards reconciliation. We are going to be hearing from SOCAN Foundation, Canada Council for the Arts, Manitoba Arts Council, Factor, and Manitoba Film and Music. So first, I would like to introduce Tessa, who's from SOCAN Foundation, all the way from Toronto. Give it up for Tessa.
Hi, I'm Tessa, as Elise mentioned earlier, and I'm from SOCAN Foundation. How many people are SOCAN members here? Okay. How many people are artists here? Okay, interesting. All right, we'll talk more about that later. So we have 3 grants. I'll just get into that now because we have a little bit of time, and then we can talk more in detail about everything later. But we have 3 grants geared toward the music creator, the songwriter. So when I say that, when you're a member of SOCAN, you're an individual member. You have a member ID as an individual, regardless of if you're in a group or a band. So these grants are for you as an individual. So even if you're in a group, a duo, a band, each of you would apply for our grants as separate members of that band, okay? So the first one that I'll touch on is travel assistance. So that's our most popular, and it's often the first grant any music creator really gets because it's really simple. It's a rolling deadline. So basically to get our travel assistance grant, you just have to make sure you apply the day before you're traveling. So the day before you leave for whatever trip. And usually these grants go towards showcases. So if you get a Breakout West showcase, an overseas showcase, maybe South by Southwest, something that's unpaid but is going to move your career forward. So we don't fund touring and things like that where you're selling merch and you're selling tickets. It's more so just professional development showcases and things like that. So just make sure you're really clear on those guidelines before you apply for that. And that, as I said, is a rolling deadline, so you can apply anytime, just as long as it's the day before you leave. And the amounts are calculated by distance. So the further you go, typically the more you would get, and it gets capped at $1,000. The second one that we have is professional development. So this would kind of be the next step, I would say, in your career, more of a mid-career level grant, because to get this grant, you would have to have at least 2 SOCAN royalty payments per year for the last 3 years. So when I ask if you're a member, that's a really important piece of information, because if you're applying for that, we immediately just check your royalty statements to make sure that your career is actually moving. But for that, you can apply for any professional development activity. So it could be conferences, if you just want to go to, say, CMW and pay the conference fee and network, that type of thing. Folk Music Ontario, there's conferences all over the world, really. It could be international, and you could just be going to learn. You don't have to be playing or anything like that. So you could even use it for music lessons, anything really that's going to make you a better musician or creator or songwriter. And that one is $1,500 max. So the third one, and I would say the least popular at this point, is our work commissioning assistance grant. And that is only because I would say you don't actually apply that for yourself. Somebody would apply for it on your behalf if they wanted to commission you to create something new. So this could go from, you know, a symphony wanting you to create a new orchestral piece to your brother is getting married and he wants you to write the song that you're writing walking down the aisle to. Literally, if someone wants you to make a new piece of music, we'll help pay, well, we'll match funds basically. So if they want to pay you $1,000, we'll match that $1,000 so that you'd get paid $2,000 total. So that's basically the only 3 grants that we have for individual music creators, but they're very popular. They're in high demand, especially travel assistance. So we can talk more about that later on.
I have a question.
Sure.
The first one, the travel assistance, what was the size of the grant for that?
So the max for travel assistance is $1,000, and it's basically we kind of just look at how far you're traveling one way, kilometer-wise.
Next, I am going to invite, who did I say was next? Right, James and Jen from Canada Council for the Arts. Give it up. They're also from Toronto.
Hey, everybody. I think we have a slightly long presentation, so if you see us flipping pages, it's because we're skipping over information that's maybe slightly less important. We'll catch you later at the desk, and hopefully, you know, you can stick around for this Vietnamese salad roll thing, and we can actually have some conversations, because the whole reason we came from Ottawa is to actually, you know, to meet with people, especially because we have a lot of good news at Canada Council about new funding opportunities, doubled granting budget, commitment to first-time grant recipients as well, and we'll get into a bit of that in the presentation. So I think you're kicking it off. Sorry.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you for having us here. My name's Jen McKerral. I'm a program officer with the Explore and Create program at the Canada Council. And this is James Missen, who's also a program officer with Explore and Create. I know we're kind of pressed on time. I just want to know, most of us here, artists, do we have managers? Okay. Labels? Okay, and then artists otherwise? Anything else? Okay, cool. Awesome. Sweet. Who here already has a Canada Council profile? Oh, awesome. Okay, cool.
Okay, so just briefly about Canada Council for the Arts. We're a national public arts funder based in Ottawa. One of the foundational principles at Canada Council is peer-based assessment. So presently we're the largest public arts funder in Canada. We operate at a non-governmental level, which is to say at an arm's length from the government, although we are connected through Department of Canadian Heritage. So what we do, we champion and invest in artistic excellence through grants, services, prizes, and payments to professional Canadian artists. All the information about how we allocate our funds can be found on our website. If you see us at the table later, we can cruise through that with you. A quick snapshot of the 17-18 fiscal year. So the last year we have closed publicly available information, although 18-19 will be coming in mid-October. We distributed over $200 million to almost 2,300 Canadian artists across all disciplines and almost 1,900 Canadian arts organizations.
We'll talk about the basics today. There are pretty much 4 steps to applying for a grant. And so first is creating your account on our portal. So when we do the breakout groups, we can show you that. That profile, once you have an account, you can create a profile. And so the profile is kind of attached to your role in the industry and in your milieu. And that profile needs to be validated. Essentially what it is just kind of it kind of gives you access to particular programs that can help you in what you're doing. Once you have a profile that's validated, then you apply for the programs. And at that point, we really encourage you, if you're a first-time applicant, to get in touch with a program officer like myself or James. And then we can chat about your project and make sure that you're going into the proper stream for what it is that you're doing. And then once you apply to the program, then that's when the assessment happens. And so that's when we put our peer assessment committees together and do all that stuff.
So we'll go into some of this information at the table and the breakouts. When you have a profile, you are eligible to accrue various types of profiles to apply. In music and sound, we break it out in terms of, are you an individual, are you a group, band, or ensemble, or are you an organization? In the interest of time, we'll break out at the table what the different options are. A common one we hear from individual artists is, should I identify as a composer sound artist, or should I identify as a musician, a professional musician? In Explore and Create program, increasingly, the difference can kind of be moot in front of a jury. You can pretty much pitch the project you wish and be assessed for the artistic merit of the project, the impact of the project, and the feasibility as well. So when you have different profiles, and we're open as well, increasingly since we adjusted to new programs heading into April 2017, when you access Canada Council through our website, it's non-disciplinary in nature. So all of the programs you can access whether you work in theater or in dance or in film and video or in music. So there may be some of you, it's 2019, artists work across media, artists are multiplicit in how they work. You might have other fields of practice you work in or types of project. We're happy to talk to you about those as well, because we can connect you with our colleagues back in the office to take more of those questions later. But one thing I want to emphasize is that there's a bit of a misnomer currently. When you have multiple types of profiles to apply, it doesn't impact your overall application limits. Essentially, the rules at Canada Council is in one granting year, which is March 1st to March 1st every year, you can apply 3 different times, with the exception of the travel grants and the touring grants, where you can apply multiple times, and you're capped at a maximum amount you can receive. That's the headline information I wanted to give you right now. We'll go back to Jen.
This is cute, eh? Oh, sorry. So to get a validated profile as a professional artist, essentially that eligibility means that you have specialized training in the artistic field, not necessarily in academic institutions. We know that that's not realistic in all cases. That you're recognized as a professional by other artists working in the same field of practice. That you're committed to your own artistic vision and to the creation and or promotion of original work, and that you have a history of public presentation or publication in a professional context, and you receive a professional fee for your work. So when you're creating your profile, you have to submit a CV, and so we need to see in that CV just essentially that you've had at least one paid performance, and you have to let us know the year because it has to be a minimum of 2 years ago. So we have to know that you've been practicing for more than 2 years in a professional context. If you don't fit that description because you're kind of just starting out, maybe you've done a couple club shows and you're kind of moving up, we actually just launched a pilot program for new and early career artists. So it's for the next 2 years, we're accepting profiles and applications from new and early career artists, which means that you're showing evidence of some activity and some growth in the past 2 years. So just make sure that that's on your CV, and you'll have access to some of the same programs that a professional profile would give you access to. So actually, I have a bit more specifics here. So you have to be at least 18 years old, be a Canadian citizen, not already have an approved applicant profile. So if you already have one in one field of practice, but you're just starting out in music or sound, you can still apply through your professional profile. So you can't have a professional profile and a new and early artist career profile. And you cannot have previously received a grant, obviously. But yeah, have some training experience and be committed to your ongoing development.
So just quickly about when you're submitting your profile, we state publicly and take up to 30 days to have it validated. It's often quicker than that, but do be mindful of what application deadlines you're applying to, because if you're doing it days before the deadline, we're busy and it can impact the capacity to have it approved. A message we'd like to pass along today too, with respect to the type of CV you're presenting, we can have more tips for you when we see you in the breakout groups, but it's essential to understand that at Canada Council, a CV does not comprise like a bio. We're not interested in fancy photos and press kits and stuff like that. We're interested in the salient information to meet the eligibility criteria. So just to reinforce what my colleague Jen said, what years did you start practicing, some names of the venues you've performed in, clearly identified things that you were paid for, not paid for. and off we go. It can be relatively straightforward, but it should be understood as well that the CV is essential information because it's provided to the jury when you apply. So we'll talk about that at the breakout table as well. A CV is attached to the application that goes forward in the portal. So a good practice I've been passing on lately is for applicants to constantly update them. Anytime you're applying to Canada Council, check what's validated in your portal account to see what your CV is and make sure you've got all the cool stuff you've been up to in the last 6 to 8 months or more reflected there as well. I think we're going to do just a quick overview of some of our funding programs. I'm conscious we're probably kicking up at the 10, maybe 11-minute mark at this point. So that's on to you, Jen.
Thanks. So we're from the Explore and Create program, which has a few different components. So there are a few streams within that program, and but essentially we're they're for research, creation, production, presentation. A few of the other programs that we have at Canada Council are Engage and Sustain, which is provides multi-year operating support to large organizations and institutions. Creating, Knowing, and Sharing, which is a program designed specifically to support Indigenous art and artists. And Indigenous artists are able to apply through those programs as well as any other programs. The Supporting Artistic Practice program, which supports a wide range of projects and initiatives whose objective is to support the general arts sector. And then Arts Across Canada and Arts Abroad, both of which support activities that happen across the country and abroad, obviously. So a lot of travel stuff. And then finally, we have the Digital Strategy Fund, which is meant to increase artists and arts organizations' capacity and connectivity in a digital world. So for Explore and Create, we're going to talk about that one today because that's the one we specialize in, and I think the one that would interest you. So whether you're an individual artist or a group, or a small organization, or even a new and early career artist, this is the funding program that will support most of your activity. So it advances, it advances Canadian artistic practices by encouraging artists to investigate creative processes and take risks that lead to the development of unique works destined to connect with the public. So it supports research, development, creation, production, and then professional development. There's a component for that as well. Still me. So for professional development, I'll just go through, I don't know, should we go through this really quick?
Yeah, do the
Okay.
components, and then we'll talk about the deadlines and the cutoff dates, and I think we're good.
Okay, cool. So professional development, it's intended to support a wide range of activities for artists to advance their own artistic development, including specialized training, internships, workshops, mentorships, anything like that, but not any general courses of study at any arts training centers or institutions like that. You can submit one of these grants per fiscal year, and you can get up to $10,000. For research and creation, so that's to support the initial phases of the research, creation, and development of an artistic project, but not the production or presentation of that project. So it can also, it supports projects sometimes that are purely about artistic research. So if you're just kind of diving into a concept or a technique or something like that, you can make a case for that in this component. And these you can apply for, again, only one per fiscal year, and these are up to $25,000. Then you have concept to realization, which is kind of everything from the beginning concept of your project to the production or presentation of your project. And these are up to $60,000, but for exceptional cases, you can apply for up to $100,000. And you can submit 2 of these per fiscal year.
So when I'm speaking with people that contact us about, what's research and creation, what's concept realization, what should I apply for? The essential element that I try to pass on, knowing that now we're kind of non-disciplinary as we outward face our information, is that the research and creation that you can apply for is anything in a music and sound context that would stop short of a completed work that'd be presented to a public. We're platform neutral and genre wide and the whole bit in terms of how any applicant is defining the project that they want to propose. So the types of projects we would see in research and creation can depend on what kind of practice that you have. Is your music more contemporary classical music, folk singer, songwriter, hip hop, etc. We accept things up to kind of a demoing stage. It can be to work up tunes, rehearse, try some new techniques, etc. Whereas the concept realization, as Jen was mentioning, is the idea of completing a work and then producing and presenting it for a public. And because we're so broad in terms of how we define music and sound professionally at Canada Council, it could be everything from a new main stage Canadian opera production by a small company to the making of a recording that also has a release concert attached to it, that also has a video element attached to it. There's plenty of examples. One of the positive steps we made recently at Canada Council is we have open data sets available at our website at canadacouncil.ca. As I said, the 17-18 fiscal year, which ended in March 2018, information is available. Give us about another month and a half, and those data sets should be searchable for the 18-19 year, i.e. last March. So you can search applicants by name, region. You could find out who was funded within the province, within the city, and get some project descriptions as well. Another thing I wanted to pass on before we conclude and turn the mic over to our other funding agency colleagues is part of the shift to the new programs is an understanding that we no longer really have application deadlines in the sense that we did in the past. The only programs that really have deadlines are the ones that are for core grants, which to support established arts organizations across disciplines. Formerly, we would have called them operating grants that have very fixed deadlines at certain times. Otherwise, we refer to them colloquially as cutoff dates. So the best way to illustrate this is really to think strategically in terms of your 3 applications a year as an applicant and your various timelines for your various projects over the next, say, 6 to 12 to 24 months, because you can apply for certain things at different moments. And the key thing to understand with the cutoff date is when we're committing to give you a result. So the biggest deadline on our horizon in terms of what we're working on is Wednesday, October the 2nd. That's our cutoff for both research and creation and concept realization. Those results are coming in February 2020. The next deadlines will probably be in the spring with July results. But this is important to understand because we still get a lot of questions day to day. What are your deadlines? When do I need to get it in? It's no longer the case. You apply when you're ready. You define your project. You define the start date, and off you go. So we did have some other notes. I want to respect the time limit here. We have some other notes about the peer assessment process. Again, I think it's better to go into that more in the breakouts because it ties very intimately with some tips we can provide you about how to apply the types of projects that you want to be thinking about. But most essentially, and I've worked at Canada Council for a number of years, really understanding what the eligibility, it's like what Elise was saying in the introduction, every agency has their different mandate and their different things that they're looking for. Really understanding the criteria of the program you're applying to, and now the criteria tie to the program objectives, and how you can situate your project within that to give it a competitive chance. So.
Next, we have Factor. We've got Megan. She did come from Toronto. Yes, I got this one right. And so we're pretty familiar with Factor here, but it's really nice to have somebody in town with all of that inside info. So give it up for Megan as she comes up to tell us about it.
So as you may or may not know, Factor, we're a national funding organization, and I really appreciate what Elise said in the intro about kind of being aware of the differences between funders and kind of what their specific aims are, because I think you'll hear things that are similar between funders, but there are some key differences. So Factor is not an arts council. We're funded in part by the Department of Canadian Heritage and private radio broadcasters. So with Factor, there's a real emphasis on, like, our mission is to support the growth and development of the Canadian music industry, and with that, it's about the commercialization of music and just generally getting it out to your audience. So we're a national organization. We fund all genres of music. For our funding, the basic eligibility requirement is that you're a Canadian or permanent resident, have SCIS card, things like that, or if you're in a group, at least 50% are Canadian permanent resident or have a status card. All of our program applications are online, and we can, in the breakout sessions, I can show you the portal, and we can kind of go through that. We've got some pocket guides. I think they're conveniently located at the snack table. So if, after tonight or 2 weeks from now, you're like, okay, wait, what do I do? Take a look at this. This is also online, and it will help kind of guide you through how to get set up in our system. So I'll just briefly give an overview of 3 of our programs that are artist directed, and the ones that are most popular. So 2 most popular programs are artist development and juried sound recording. These are programs that get assessed by jurors. These are volunteer jurors from across the country, but also really encourage all of you and your friends to become jurors to do that peer assessment. So the artist development program, it's a $2,000 grant, and it used to be our demo program, and it used to be $1,500 to create a sound recording, but the industry has changed. It's a lot easier to do that in a home studio or do a cost-effective. So you can use that funding. You can still use it for sound recording, but you could use it to make video content, do marketing, touring, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the entry level. Then the next step up is the juried sound recording program, and this is a grant to produce a full-length sound recording, and you get marketing support to go along with that. So that can be kind of traditional marketing campaigns, touring, video, radio marketing, things like that. So for the juried sound recording, you can get up to $25,000 for the sound recording and marketing, and then there's additional funding for international touring, video content production, things like that. So with that, because it's such a big step up from the artist development, as part of the application, you would be submitting a marketing plan, and we would say, you know, generally, if you've created some sound recordings before, or if you have the team and plan to really leverage that money, then absolutely go for it. We have 2 deadlines for those programs each year. The next one coming up is October 17th. And just so you know, we made a change where you're only able to apply every other deadline. And also at each deadline, you can only apply to one of the 2 programs. So kind of like I think Jen and James were saying, you know, it's about kind of being strategic and, you know, choosing the right time for when you're going to put in that application. Then the other program I was going to mention is our live performance showcase funding. That's not a juried program. That's just purely eligibility based. So would really encourage you, if you meet the requirements, generally speaking, as long as you can kind of check off those requirements, you're very likely to get the funding. So I think kind of similar to SOCAN, showcasing for Factor, it's events where the audience, you know, is either primarily or includes music industry. The goal is that, you know, you're performing at these showcase in order to create, you know, business connections or you know, industry partners. We have a list of pre-approved showcases, but we always add to it as well. So yeah, I mean, things Breakout West, CCMAs, things like that. So definitely take a look at that. The funding for that, it's a subsidy base, so the showcase funding isn't intended to cover all of your expenses, but the way it's calculated is by the number of people who are traveling and then the territory. So if you're going outside of Canada, you get a little bonus, going to Europe, a little more, other countries in the world, even more. So generally speaking, if it's 2 to 3 people, you're looking at about $1,500. But it just kind of depends on how many people are traveling and where you're going. That's just the kind of main overview. You know, looking forward to diving in deeper in the breakout sessions. And I think if you leave with, well, leave with 2 things, leave with this. And also I think just really, you know, I think we get feedback, especially kind of outside of Toronto, outside of Ontario, like, oh, Factor, like that's, you know, you have no chance, don't do that. Really want to encourage you to apply, and hopefully can show you the applications, and you can see you can do it. It's achievable. So leave with that and tell all your friends that too.
And factor is something that I'm supposed to know a lot about as well. So if you have questions when Megan isn't here, you can always ask me as well. All right. So next, we just talked to the Canadian funding bodies, and they service all of Canada. So we're going to move to what is here for musicians just in Manitoba. So I'd like to invite Cathleen from Manitoba Arts Council to come up and share with us next.
Well, I'm going to sound a little bit like the Canada Council in some respects, because we've actually done a lot of the same kinds of things as they've done recently. We've gone to online applications, and so we have this portal idea as well. And what you need to do is just go onto our website, the Manitoba Arts Council website, and you'll find a little button at the top of our main page that says sign in. And when you get there, if you've not come in already, and if you're not a person that has a profile on our system already, you're going to register. And it's a pretty simple process. It's just checking off the boxes, and again, a lot of the boxes are the same boxes. So you're over 18, you're Canadian, in this case a Manitoban, you're somebody who's obviously done some training, and it can be self-study in a variety of arts. I was going to say all art forms are again also brought into our system in the same way, but all genres of music, of course, are also available for funding. We have a few different kinds of applicant types that you can be. So not to confuse, some of you will be what we call professional arts cultural workers, maybe, if you're doing management and tour coordination, that sort of thing. And most of you will be professional artists. If you're a professional artist, the professional artist category allows you to apply to the most different kinds of programs. So if you're one or other of those things, just come in as a professional artist. And that's the first step to coming to the Manitoba Arts Council. Manitoba Arts Council also is an arm's length from government agency that funds professional arts of all disciplines here in the province of Manitoba. And we do have a number of different grant programs. Again, they're also all disciplines, so everybody comes in, but ultimately we will be having at the jury table that decides the amounts that go to whichever applicants, we'll have specifically music people, and ideally specifically music people that have some of the genre that you're coming into us with. The kinds of programs that we have, I'll just kind of go quickly through them. These are the ones that I sort of think are the most interesting maybe for you. Create. Create is to create. Carve some time out of your busy lives to do that. So you can do some research, again, you can do some development of something, some creation. We've opened things up quite a bit. We do have some prohibitions, and I'm just going to say what they are right now, Steve. But it's because of our sister agency, Manitoba Film and Music, who does recording projects and film projects. We don't do recording projects, and we don't do anything to do with film, so film scores, that sort of thing. Any kind of recording kind of thing. In terms of presenting work, if you want to be your own concert presenter and do an application to do a presentation, we get a lot of applications from organizations. Some of you will know them, West End Cultural Center, other kinds of entities that would be actually presenting. We do get those kinds of applications. We also get them from individuals who just decide, I'm going to rent a hall, I'm going to sell some tickets, put some promo out in there and have a show. You can do that, and we do fund both artists, groups, and organizations through that Present program. The Learn Travel Professional Development program, it's kind of a combination of travel assistance and professional development. What we've done, again, is really reduce the number of things we say, this is for this, and that. We've taken all that out, and we just said, costs for your project, go for it. And in one way, this program is slightly different from the Canada Council. I think it was Canada Council, or it was maybe SOCAN. I think you were talking about it, Tess, where you have travel assistance for things that are not paid. Yeah. We actually didn't put a prohibition about that into our into our new guidelines. So until somebody decides that that's weird, we're going to be allowing you to do really pretty much anything. So you can go anywhere, go to any conference, go to any show, but if you're actually doing something that's taking you somewhere where you're going to actually do some presentation, I'm going to give you an example from dance, because this is another area of mine. Presenter in Toronto, Harbourfront, is doing a festival of dance, and a company's going there. They actually get presenting fees when they're there, but they're not getting any money to get there. So they're looking for funding in a variety of other places. So that kind of situation can happen in music too, where you're going to be presented and you'll get a fee, but it might not cover all your costs, so you're looking for funding to get there. You can come to us for that. That's through our Travel Professional Development Grant. Today we did an assessment on some travel professional development grants, and we noted that there's a few people out there that will come in with a project that looks like it's something they could come in for residencies. We have a residencies program. So they kind of think too small. The travel professional development grant, well, you can only apply for $1,000, so it's a little grant. Create grants, if you're emerging artists, you can come in for $75,000, pardon me. And if you're an established artist, you can come in for $15,000. That's in the Create grant. In the Present grant, you can come in for any kind of project up to $15,000 if it's a single project. If you're planning on doing a couple of seasons of, say, concerts, say you've got like some big idea and you're going to do 4 concerts this year, 4 concerts next year, you can apply for up to $20,000 for each year through the Present grant. And as I said, with the Travel PD, it's just up to $1,000. I also wanted to mention, how many of you are from Winnipeg? Probably most of us, yeah, okay. So you also have the Winnipeg Arts Council, and I know they're not here today, but I just want to say a little bit about them too, because you all can also get funding from the Winnipeg Arts Council. If any of you have ever applied to MAC before for Travel PD, that's often an entry-level sort of application, and it used to be that we would fund you up to 50% of your costs, and then a lot of you would go to the WAC for the other, Winnipeg Arts Council for the other 50%, and that way you'd be able to cover your costs. So currently, we've taken that prohibition off as well. You can apply for your 100% of your costs, but up to $1,000. So say your project is going to cost you $2,000, you're definitely going to want to go over to the Winnipeg Arts Council to look for funding there as well. And they have it in just certain denominations, like $250, $500, $750, $1,000, or something like that. And they also have an individual's grant for artists of all disciplines. That's for up to $7,500. And you can go on their website and find out all about their application process as well. In terms of our process, the first thing is, of course, to get online with a profile in our system. And after that, we'll send you a message that says you're active in our system. And if you go in again to your page in our system, it'll list all the grant applications that you're eligible to apply for. And you can just start an application. In terms of just sort of leaving you with something, because I don't think I really have that much more to say just about the general stuff. I know we're going to get into all sorts of details in a little bit, but I would just say, when you're doing applications of any kind, read really closely. Read really closely. If you don't understand what is meant by provide some information about your influences or whatever, contact us. That's the second thing. So read. At MAC, we have program-specific guidelines, and we also have a general set of guidelines. We've buried them. They're really hard to find, but you must find them and you must read them. I have a set with me, actually. But the general guidelines will give you all sorts of information about eligibility, about what kinds of activities are eligible, and a lot of other information about just the process itself, going all the way from starting to getting an application funded and final reports, etc. So those are really important to read. Call, consult, talk to the program officers, call me. I'll have a bunch of cards here. I'll leave those also up by the snacks. And we're happy to help you in your applying process as well. If your application is not successful, and oftentimes with first-timers especially, it may not be, try and try again. That's what we tell everybody. And also, ask for feedback. We're always happy to help you either before, during, or after the process. Okay?
Last but certainly not least, we have the famous Stephen Carroll from Manitoba Film and Music.
So I'm your neighborhood funder for music generally in the province, funding all things you generally need to take a song from an idea in your head and to be touring it around the world and having it released on multiple platforms and marketed correctly. So myself and Bonnie, my colleague, who is not here, we administer the music grants that we receive and loans. Some of our programs are loans. So we generally kind of echo factor in a lot of the same goals with our programs. We are focused on the commercialization of music and slightly different than the Canada Council and the Manitoba Arts Council with the kind of end goals and the way we sort of are the lens that we use for our programs. So for our discussion today and like my brief presentation, I will just give you a quick bird's eye view of our programs and talk about more specific items and things to focus on with your applications in our sort of breakouts. So we have programs for recording, which are a juried program. They have 3 deadlines. The first deadline of the year was in May. The next deadline is coming right up this month. It's September 23rd, and we'll have a following deadline September 26th, and then January 23rd is the next one for this fiscal. Our fiscal year runs April 1 till March 31st, and we generally kind of run the bank account dry pretty quickly, so it's always better to get your applications in earlier in the fiscal year. As we get later in the fiscal year, we start running out of funds, but we always reserve funds for the recording program. So the recording program has 3 levels. We have a level 1, which is your entry-level program. Used to be the matching program to Factor's demo program, and for that you can apply for a demo, or you can apply to release a short recording, such as a recording project, such as a EP or a single. So 1 to 4 songs, and that's up to $2,000 from us, which would represent actually an investment on our part of in 75% of your total budget. So almost 100% funded there. So that's $2,000 entry level, level 1, and then level 2 is up to $10,000 from us, and that would represent 60% of your final budget. We don't fund everything 100% on any of our programs. You're always having to find some other funding. We hope you go to Factor or Canada Council for subsequent funding to get 100% funded if you can pull that off. And that program is for recording 5 songs or more. The level 3 recording program is up to $20,000 from us, and that's for recording 6 songs or more. And the goal of all those recordings is for them to be released on all the platforms, marketed with the best practices of the commercial music business, the present-day music business, except for the level 1, which demo, which is a demo for internal kind of artistic exploration, for building your career, for presenting to industry. So that's the recording program. Again, that's the only one that has a fixed deadline, and then we have 3 a year. But it's open. Our programs are open to all Manitobans to apply. You just have to have been a resident here for 365 days prior to your date of application, and you just have to be legally entitled to live here. Otherwise, there's no other rule regarding residency. And a couple other background items. You're going to have a registered Manitoba business, because we don't write checks to artists individually. We actually only write checks to businesses. So you have to register a business name and get a business bank account, which we feel generally professionalizes you in an aspect, or maybe in a way that we want to direct you towards having an actual legitimate business and have a good foundation for going forwards with your career. So then we have 3 other programs that are relevant for most of the audience here, or I guess 4. We have a touring program. So that's to support tour dates, and that's a minimum of 6 concerts. It's a rolling deadline. Got to apply before you leave, essentially. It covers all the costs that you can imagine that would go into a tour. You're allowed to claim your own time in all of our grants as artist fees, so there's some artist-friendly aspects, which I'll show you when I go through the budgets with you. You're also allowed to claim per diems, and that program's pretty wide open. It's not juried, it's just adjudicated internally based on really review by myself, Bonnie, and my boss, the CEO. And we look for eligibility issues and quality of the product and critical nature of the tour. So the further away you go from Winnipeg, essentially the more critical your need for funding, for example, that would be a metric we would look for. I won't go too much into metrics right now. Then that program is open for you to submit multiple applications. So the maximum amount of money we'll hand out in a year is $15,000 to you for touring. And it's a separate application from recording. You just make it on your own, unlike factors which is sort of packaged together, depending on how you access their programs. Then you'll have to have a new release for this program. So new release is a single EP or full-length recording that's been released within the past 2 years or is coming up in 6 months. We generally don't fund tours that are happening in advance of a recording being released because we don't have the funds to do that unless there's something really, really critical about this tour, like you've scored an amazing opening spot or something like that. Next program I'll discuss is the marketing program. It's just to support the marketing of a new release. Very convenient. You could come to us for recording, you could come to us for the tour, and you can come to us to market the record. So this is one of the more, I think, important programs we have because it substitutes in for the investment that's not here in Manitoba generally from the recording industry. We don't have a lot of locally based recording companies. So we are here to help subsidize your own marketing initiatives. So that can cover hiring radio teams, publicity teams, anywhere in the world, doing online ads, to printing, to graphic design, to photography, and we'll actually allow you to do a little bit of video work on that, just promo videos, background, kind of like bio pieces on the project. That program has a maximum cap of $10,000 per year per business, artist, band, and you can submit multiple applications. Next program I'll discuss is our video program. It has 2 streams. Stream for funded artists through our recording program, in which they can access up to $5,000 from us. And there we come in for 50% of the budget, and actually 50% of the budget for tour and marketing as well. I can break this down, and I have a cheat sheet to hand out which summarizes all this. So if you're not catching all this through your pen, through scribbling and typing, I have it for you. Then the video program's second stream is called the Viral Video Stream, and that's up to $1,500. That's just simply a lower budget video, but that program is open to all Manitobans. So if you haven't been funded from our recording programs, you're eligible to come in for that. And the video has to be shot in Manitoba. That is the critical issue to keep in mind, but you can bring in production teams from anywhere. Finally, we have a business development program for persons who have been in business managing, releasing records, or publishing, working as a publisher in Manitoba for 2 years and have 2 Manitoba clients. And you'd have to have a registered business, and it's up to $15,000 for a 2-year business plan, and you can get that grant essentially once every 2 years or so. Those are all our programs, and we are just underneath, located in the same building as Manitoba Arts Council, just over on Lombard, and we're there to support you in many ways, not only through funding, but through advice and through helping you navigate our programs. We're really try to be customer service oriented, to borrow words from another field. So we're there Monday to Friday to help you out, and we're there to help you steer you through the application process, and we'll go insofar as to actually review your applications before you submit them to let you know if anything's missing.
No, but so generally it is good to apply for as much funding as you can. And that's all stuff that you reflect in your application and in your cost report, because you can't make money off grants. So if you end up being overfunded, one or two of those funding bodies will ask for that money back. So this is not a means to make money for yourself.
Yeah, we went through a really large transformation just over 2.5 years ago. So the new thing to really pay attention to when you're applying is every guideline has a link to what we call the general list of ineligible activities. So essentially anything that's not in there is in scope to kind of try for and apply for. The critical thing for us at Canada Council in terms of overlapping funding is that you can have multiple funding agencies represented, knowing of course when we're a national agency and you're based here, you might have Winnipeg Arts Council, Manitoba Arts Council, even some Factor, maybe even some SOCAN Foundation in a grant to us. There's actually an argument to be made that in the Explore and Create program under the feasibility criteria, which is 20% of your assessment in research and creation or concept realization, I've observed in juries it can be beneficial, even if you have pending funding at the time of application, because you're showing to a jury of your peers the capacity of the project to really succeed. You have multiple supports. But it's a whole other story at the final report stage, which we can talk about in the breakout groups in more detail. You absolutely want to ensure. In fact, I had an example involving your agency just a couple days ago, with that you're not having overlapping expenses. So absolutely, if your overall project, let's say, is $30,000, $40,000, it's cool if you've gone to Factor, it's cool if you've gone to Manitoba Arts Council. But you want to be very clear, both in the application you're putting to the jury and the final report to us, what are the various costs and expenses that are covered by the different agencies? And we can talk about that in more detail.
I have one program that I feel crazy about not talking about. It's relatively new, and it's something that I am running at SOCAN Foundation. So I'm just like, what did I just do? I'm thinking, oh, grants, but now we actually have a program. This is why it's different for me, because we're used to grants and awards at SOCAN Foundation, but now we've introduced our first Incubator for creative entrepreneurship. So I kind of use ICE in a way as just because that's a lot of syllables in my brain. Incubator for creative entrepreneurship. So that again is for the individual SOCAN member songwriter, and this is all for entrepreneurship. So everything has to be business related. You need to be learning how to be a better business person, whether you be a songwriter. So we do $3,000. We have a webinar series. So that's usually over 2 months, once a week, and they kind of vary depending on the need of the applicants and the participants. But last year, just for an example, we had financial planning, publishing with the CMPA, which is the Canadian Music Publishers Association. We did grant writing session. These are just kind of examples, but everything, social media management, just things basically to have your business in place, because now the industry has changed. There's no real artist development from like record labels anymore. You kind of have to get that going on your own before people show real interest in wanting to invest in you. So we teach you how to build business plans and do all the things kind of that we're talking about that would build a good application, but also, the other things that pertain to your career as well. And then the third part of that, aside from the grant and the webinars, is one-on-one mentorship. So we'll actually pair you with one or several people from the industry who are professionals, and that mentorship is kind of the biggest key, I'd say, in the professional development, because it's really just who you know that helps you out. Obviously, all of this information is really helpful to you in knowing how to write a good grant, but if someone is willing to introduce you to someone, or if someone is willing to take a meeting with you and discuss your music with you, or listen to your music, or listen to your artist's music, that's kind of a really big catalyst in moving your career forward. So the impact from it last year was really incredible. There were publishing deals made. There were radio charting, there was lots of amazing impact that we found from our final reports, and TD is a major sponsor of this as well. So it's new for us, actually putting on programming for people versus just being like, yeah, here, take some money. We're building faculty, and Jen was actually a mentor for that program last year. So we have incredible mentors and $3,000 to put into your business. So we don't often think about that as artists when we're kind of trying to put money into our music, but we don't think about actually investing in the website development and the social media and, maybe hiring a lawyer to look over some contracts and the business costs that are associated with that, even registering as a business. So we can talk more about that, but I really want to promote that. The deadline is coming up at the end of this week, but most of the questions just kind of pertain to you as a musician. And the biggest part is, what are your knowledge gaps and what do you need to know? And the rest of it's more just research. So don't think too seriously about it if you're going to apply. Just be forthcoming and honest, and the music will speak for itself.
Then before I sign off, I have to thank our funders, which is Factor and the Government of Canada, the Province of Manitoba, and SOCAN Foundation. So if it weren't for them, we would not be able to provide this training for you. So we are very thankful for that. And with that, I will release you. And you can give me your papers for your groups at the end.